when I reached out, because I was listening, the way that I ended up reaching out to you, and I'm sure that there are boatloads of Cartel fans in the world, but the way I reached out to you was uh, I was just having a moment where like I was not having a great day, and I had built a playlist where I just took all of your albums and essentially just put them into a single playlist and just throw it on shuffle. And so I did that, and then it started giving me kind of a suggestion for Taurids.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what is this? So I started listening to that, and I was like, oh, this is great. And then I found out it was you. And I was like,
Right.
I gotta talk to this guy. Like, I'm listening, I'm accidentally listening to everything you've done. So I was like, I gotta see what he's up to.
That's sick. I love that.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I like, it seems like you're still making a ton of music. When it looked like, and I may be wrong, it looked like from the timeline that Torrids maybe started in COVID. Like, I was trying to figure out how that all came to be.
Yeah, so when I was in Nashville, I had a studio, and the main guy in the studio, his name was Bobby, and he had Studio A and I had Studio B, and they actually shared the same live room. So I got hooked up with Bobby, and then another one of the guys, it was Bobby's good friend that had another room in the studio. His name was Adam. Adam was like, he went to Belmont for keyboard.
Oh, wow.
Is there any keys like he can just rip at? But he's also like one of the best drummers I've ever heard. So I kind of went to them. I was like, hey, I got this solo project thing. I want Bobby to mix it for sure because I can't mix it. You just can't mix yourself. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
But also like Adam should be involved because he's awesome and we need live drums. So we tracked some of that stuff in 2017 initially, and then we kind of like started kind of tracking over it over the next couple years as we just had empty space to get together and do it. So
Holy cow.
yeah. And then when COVID went down, I was like, well, we already have these songs, so why don't we go ahead and work on more songs? And so
Yeah.
we had an EP that dropped, and then we ended up doing an extra 5 songs. So it ended up being the album that I guess just came out end of last year.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say I was one of the beneficiaries of your work there. Before we keep going, by the way, I apologize for those who are listening at home. So I don't know if I'm sure you're a diehard fan of Steep Conversations, but for those that listen at home, we tell them what tea we're drinking and they steep at home with us.
Got it.
So the tea that we're drinking at home is Tazo Cinnamon Sweet or Sweet Cinnamon tea.
Yeah.
This brews at 212 for 5 minutes. I love that you chose this. I was saying this off the mic. Had this, has been a while, but I've had this before and I liked it. And so when you said it, I literally was like thinking back. I was like, oh my God, this is what I used to drink this when I lived in Chicago. I loved this tea.
Hmm.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Big fan. My wife actually got me into tea. She always has like the bedtime tea, and
Sleepy
I
time.
can't.
Yeah,
Oh, no, she's got them all, like the anything lavender, or,
sure.
any chamomile, any of that stuff. She's got it, and I can never do it because I'm one of those people that reclaims my time at the end of the night. So
Sure.
when they all go to bed, I'm binge watching stuff. I'm snacking. I'm doing my thing, right? But if I have that tea, I'm out in like 2 minutes. Like it
Oh
just
yeah.
knocks me straight out. So I'm like, well, I can't do that. So I would normally gravitate towards like the peppermint, obviously caffeine free stuff, but this stuff has like a little kick to it, a little cinnamon bite that just it's just nice.
Yeah, I just had a sip. I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I think I always find that like balance of kind of like trying to reclaim my time at the end of the night. Maybe this makes me a procrastinator. I don't know, but I always feel like I'm catching up at the end of the night, trying to do all the things I didn't get to. I don't even have kids. Like I cannot stress enough. Don't have kids. Just have a problem, I think. But the thing that I wanted to say, the thing that surprised me in what you were just saying is you were like, but your wife got you into tea. You are someone, and I mean, listen, tell me if I'm wrong, but you are someone who kind of didn't vocally choose the easiest notes at any given moment. You know what I mean? Like you're going up and down your range from what I was listening to. So did you not, were you not like always having a hot beverage nearby or like doing like 15 minutes of vocal warm-ups?
So I was a throat coat connoisseur
Sure. Yeah.
for a long time. And I got vocal lessons when we did our third album by this guy. I don't know how big you are on tangents, but this could go down one real
I
fast.
love a tangent. Give me all the
Okay.
tangents.
Here's a tangent. So our third album, Cycles, we recorded it in New York because that's where our label was at the time. And they had a studio. And I was like, look, like I go on tour, I get sick just because tour.
Yeah.
And I end up having like a rough middle couple weeks. Like if it's a 6 week tour, it's 2 weeks of awesome to start, 2 weeks of oops, I'm sick, and then 2 weeks of I got it back. And you still have to play shows, can't cancel shows, otherwise, you don't make money, and that doesn't work.
No, I was gonna say, yeah.
um, because like spoiler alert, we're not rich. Um, so
What? I'm
yeah,
stunned.
I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it's a shocking development, but
So you're
so
recording Cycles in New York.
recording Cycles, yeah. And I was like, look, guys, like I always get sick. Like, do you guys know any vocal, coaches, anything like that that can just kind of give me some stuff? I've never had proper training. Like, help me out here. And they're like, ah, we actually have just the guy. They booked it. Should give me the address. Show up here 11 o'clock, whatever. Cool. I rock down. It's like upper west side. And I'm like, okay, this is nice, like it's north of Columbus Circle. All these buildings are very clean. There's nobody peeing on the sidewalk. This is okay. I love New York, but there are different spots where you're like sketchy, not sketchy.
Dude, I'm a
Um,
born and raised New Yorker. I get it, man. I get it.
yeah, you got it. So like Upper West Side, I'm just like, all right, this is nice. This is maybe too nice. Um, go into the place and it's like got like I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is all one apartment, but I don't know. It's like I'm on the bottom floor. What's going on? And his assistant's like, oh, just wait here. Don will be with you in a second. I'm like, cool, Don Lawrence. And I didn't like look him up beforehand. I was just like, it's just Don Lawrence, right
Sure.
on. And so he comes out. It's like, kind of short, squatty, older guy. Come on in, Will. Like, great. Walk into this room. And it's like got the double doors, so it's all soundproofed. And there's a window like right there on the sidewalk. And then I'm just like looking around at the walls. They're just plastered with platinum and diamond and gold albums. And I'm looking up there going like, uh-oh. It's Whitney Houston, Christina Aguilera, U2,
I mean, those are big
Rolling
ones.
Stones.
Holy
Yeah. Well,
crap.
like if they're a big singer and they're known for their vocals, Bon Jovi, they've Don's been their coach. The Misfits was the one that was like, the Misfits. He's like, you wouldn't believe it, but the guy's got pipes. I'm like, right on, Misfits. All right, cool. Um, so immediately intimidated, and I'm like, all right, what's the deal, Don? Let's go. He just sits on the piano. He's like, we're just going to start going up the scale. Just follow my scale. I'm like, okay. So we just start ripping. And we're talking, and he's asking, and he's like, you go on tour, like you guys are a rock band, like I listen to your stuff. He's like, your tone is pretty good. He's like, we can help you get a lot better. I'm like, great. Well, it was like endurance is my thing. I want to just like, even when I get sick, because I know I'm going to get sick,
Yeah.
like that I can be able to push through it and not lose my voice. And he's like, well, what do you do? I was like, well, I have a little steam inhaler thing or like a shower or whatever. He's like, right on. Okay, cool. He's like, what else do you do? I was like, well, I try to sleep a lot and just kind of vocal rest. He's like, yeah, that's fine. He's like, what else? I was like, throat coat. And he goes, God, no. I'm like, what? And he's like, throat coat is for like after you sing. It's not for before you sing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. He's like, yeah. He's like, it sucks for pre-sing. I'm like, all right, well, there you go. So that was my throat coat story, but it came from a man where he was just like, starting to dish on all these people. He's like, I taught Whitney until she started smoking. I said, Whitney, you got to quit smoking or I'm not going to teach you. And she gave me the finger and I stopped. He's like, and she sucked since that day. I was like, hot take,
Yeah, I
hot
was gonna
take.
say that's definitely a bold opinion.
Yeah.
That's
He
crazy. I
might not be
mean,
wrong though.
no, I mean, listen, I don't know when she started smoking, so I definitely, I'm gonna be
I think it was
honest. Like,
after everything.
I want to dance with somebody will always be in my rotation. So
That
just
was
throwing that out
pre-smoking
there.
for sure.
At that point, like Chroma and Cartel, self-titled, were already released. Did you working with this guy? Did you have to go back and like relearn how to sing your songs?
No. So oddly enough, he teaches, I forget what the name of the technique is, but it's an opera technique that he taught. And it's a
Oh,
very specific, I mean, you think opera and go, huh? It's actually just kind of like where you place your tone. So
hmm.
we'll walk the listeners through this and you as well. So as you're talking just right now, if you notice where your mouth is vibrating, it's all like kind of front and like in your teeth.
Hmm.
And there's a a change where you start to focus where the air goes. And if, your soft palate, so if you rub your tongue on the top of your mouth and get it, there's like a bone right in the middle that's like a hump. And right behind that hump, it's soft. There's no bone.
Oh yeah.
So that little crevice right behind that bone is where you try to aim your air.
That
And
sounds
it takes all,
impossible.
well, it seems like it, but then you're like, oh, okay, like if you start walking it back, and you'll hear my tone change probably, although it's allergy season, so maybe not. But if you walk it back, like I'm all at the front of my mouth now, but then when I walk it back to the top, it gets a little lighter and a little easier to talk back here in a higher pitch.
Yeah, I used to tour a little bit, nowhere near the extent that y'all did, but like I used to tour a little bit, and I remember I met with a vocal coach at one point because I mean you were much better than me in terms of the stamina. After 3 nights in a row, I was dying. Like
Yeah.
I like was losing my voice. And I like told this vocal coach and she was like, "Well, you hear how you're talking right now?" And in my head, like a jackass, I'm like, "Suavely." Uh like with beautiful sultry tones. That yeah.
Yeah.
And she's like, "You're even talking incorrectly." And I was like, "Run that back. What was that?" Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's like she and then she taught me like essentially I'm supposed to be talking up here because here is apparently where like it's the least amount of pressure on my vocal cords, but I don't talk. It's
Yeah.
weird. I can't do that.
Yep. It's tough. I mean, I catch myself doing it. So on tour, like I try to just always be in that spot. And there's some other like weird, like basically drills, for lack of a better term, that kind of train you to get there easier.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like lifting and like hitting high notes where it's just like you, instead of aiming it at that spot, you're aiming like right out of the top of the crown of your head.
Oh
So
my
like it's
God.
just it's a different way of getting you to focus on something that's not your throat for like your technique that your body just naturally does if you push this. And this is like an opera technique from like the 1800s. It's like very well respected, well renowned, but it doesn't necessarily change like all. He was like, opera is all in your mouth, like how you shape your mouth. It's not like how you're singing. So you sing the same way, just put the note there, and it just becomes way easier to do. I'm like, okay. And we were recording, so I had a lot of time to kind of like work it out before
Yeah.
we went on tour. So yeah, that helped tremendously. I still sometimes forget to do it, and I'm just like, damn it. Like I'll feel my throat starting to tighten up. I'm like, Don would kick my ass right now.
Well, I was gonna say, so when you went on tour directly after learning that, did you see a difference? Were you like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
actually, oh, you did?
Even the
Wow.
producer, like when we were the engineer, when we were recording vocals, would even say like after I'd go and warm up, or after I had a session with Don and came back and recorded vocals that afternoon, he'd be like, "Your voice is completely different when you come back. Like it's so much lighter and like it's easier for you to hit anything." So I'm like, "Oh,
Wow.
cool. Probably should keep doing this then."
But you did, but it sounds like you were like, okay, once I learned it, I rapped.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and then also it's just once, well, when you're in a room like that, you immediately, it's like all respect. I'm just like, yes, whatever you tell me is what
Yep.
I'm going to do. And then afterwards, I'm thinking like that had to be extremely expensive,
Well,
because
hopefully it
like,
was coming out of the label. Hopefully not from
oh
you.
yeah, yeah. No, I didn't pay a dime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hopefully Don never gets my address if that's a past due bill, because I'd be broke.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's hope he doesn't. I wonder how often you get this. So like obviously, we listen to all these bands, Cartel being one of the largest ones in all these different contexts. One of the contexts, and I'm so curious your response to this, is like when we would be, because we caught you when we were like, yeah, I don't know what the age is, like 15 to like, like all the way through college, all that stuff. We would listen to you a lot when we were having parties. So
Oh
when
yeah,
we were like playing what we called Beirut, other people call it beer pong, but like when we were playing stuff like that, like it was like all y'all were the soundtrack to that entire process. Like, do you have people come up to you that are like, in their 30s and 40s and just being like, when I used to party all the time, I would listen to you.
I've had several different variations of that. The weirdest one I think is like so I work in golf now. That's kind of like my full time thing.
What?
I've been a golf geek since I was like 7. My family's just all these golf nuts. Um, but I played in high school, but chose to join the band instead of go to my second year of golf team because
Okay.
band's way cooler. Um,
Sure.
it was an easy decision. It was like, well, band practice is the same time as golf practice, and parents are like, well, you can't do both. Which one are you going to do? It's like probably not going to be Tiger Woods. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's go with band. Let's go with band. So, you know, dominoes fall over the last like 4 or 5 years, and now I just started a new job at this company from Chicago called Bettinardi. When I was doing the interview, and of course, like as just a standout, I put all the Cartel stuff on my resume,
Yeah, why
just from a
not?
business standpoint. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of money that went through the band. I would kind of like managed, not like the actual cash, but just sort of like the business concepts of things. So yeah, we'll apply that to business. And so I threw it on there, and people ask about it. I'm like, oh yeah. They're like, you still do that? I'm like, yeah, we get together every now and then, but it's not like a full time job. They're like, cool, that's neat. And so I get on with the interview, and Sam Bettinardi, who runs the company, he's like, so Will, I got to ask you this question right off the bat. Cartel. I'm like, yeah, what about it? Well, what you got? He's like, I love your band. Absolutely love your
Oh,
band. I'm like, you own the company that I am going to work for. So like, okay, cool.
yeah. It's a
It's
good
just like,
start. Good start to
yeah, I
this.
was like, so do I got the job? Like,
Yeah,
what's the
yeah.
deal? um, Obviously I got the job, but it was not because of that, but or maybe because of that. I
I was
don't
gonna
care. I got the
listen.
job.
Who cares? Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't hurt when someone opens up a thing with like, "Listen, I think I already love you, so let's have this interview." You're like, great. Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm interested in that."
didn't send me the paperwork, but so he's like 5 years younger than me. He's like, when I was in high school, I listened to your band all the time. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. So
Yeah,
that
but
that tracks.
it is like a real thing that I don't know how familiar you are with this or how much this is reaching your world, but like there is a very large resurgence that's kind of occurring right now, where like all of those of us who grew up on pop punk are kind of starting to ask for it again. I think there are some artists right now, like, my fiance loves Olivia Rodrigo, and like she
Hmm.
is tapping into that like Paramore sound, like Haley Williams style, so much so that I think she credited her on one of her songs that she released. But like I went to, and again, I don't know how much this hits your radar, but like so I live in Los Angeles. I was in Denver, and me and all my high school and college friends, we were all in Denver together, and we went to an emo night at a music venue in Denver. I am not kidding you when I tell you this thing sold out. There were lines around the block of people who weren't able to get tickets, who were waiting in hopes that they could get in. But like Cartel was coming up, and like, again, something corporate came up, and Fall Out Boy, and Panic, and I don't know if you ever knew the Cab, but like someone played some tracks by the
Hmm.
Cab that came up. Like all these bands, and there's this increasing demand of like these fans are essentially like, hey, we're still here. Like we want this music. Does any of that get to you? Like reach you?
So they bring like I feel like there's a rotating cast of us, but they bring some of the lead singers or like whoever the personalities were. They bring them out to those things to like DJ, like to have a guest
Oh,
DJ. So likely, if that one was sold out, there was probably a guest DJ that might be from some random band you just hadn't heard of,
that might be true.
or you just completely lost the because in the craziness, like there's 100 people on stage, so they might just be up there and you have no idea.
Yes, that also happened. I was going to say there were tons of people up there,
Yeah.
and it was there are different like sections, I think, of like listeners who listen to this, and there were a lot of like super tatted, 50 different piercings on their faces, people headbanging in the front. And I was like, oh, I'm just a boring guy in the back, just listen to the tunes.
Yep. No, that's how I vibe with it all. It's very odd to me because they'll have some guys who are like older than me, and I'm not going to name names, but they'll go to those DJ appearances, and they'll like stand up at the front of the stage, like clear the stage, and they're like performing, and they'll
Oh,
have the mic, and they'll be like singing all the songs and like acting like it's a show to whatever their playlist is, which is like, no hate, but I would just like look at that as an introvert and go, uh-uh. Like, no, like I only play my songs live for money. I'm certainly not going to do that for someone else. Like when I was a
so
kid, I
weird.
had no fear. Now I'm just like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
I
I'm
listen,
not going to be a jackass.
I'm a very intense extrovert. I wouldn't do that. Like that
Hmm.
is that's just too much for me. And I
It's a
also
lot.
think like how one approaches it, I think from that perspective, like how one is coming into that, like if you are saying like, hey, what up, like, you know, I'm Will from Cartel and it's super stoked to be here, I'm going to enjoy this night as much as y'all, and then that's the whole thing, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, yeah, that's awesome, like we all like the same music, you wouldn't have made it if you don't like it, like we're all here, it's fun. If you're coming out and being
Right.
like, everyone get off the stage, it's my time, it's Will's time, you're like, that's weird. Like,
Yep.
I don't know how to feel about Will's time. That's an, you know, it's
It's interesting. It's a little dish. So there's an emo
hit
night
me.
Brooklyn,
Oh,
and then there's an emo night LA. And the emo night LA one is the one that has like the little tombstone with the little like crack in it, and I think it says emo night on it or something like that.
sure.
So they're the ones that sort of like popularized it. But right behind them, like if not simultaneously, an emo night Brooklyn popped up, and that one's called emo night Brooklyn. Emo
Okay.
night is emo night LA. And there's this like little, and I'm like, of course it's LA and New York, right? Like there was hip hop
Always.
and now it's emo night DJ this. Um, it's like Tupac and Biggie and then this. Like, Jesus, where are we at?
Obviously, the very natural, yeah, the natural successor to Tupac and Biggie.
Right. So, exactly. Yeah. A bunch of like white kids with eyeliner. It's,
Correct.
like, of course it is. Um, but so there's this like little turf war that goes down with it, but they stay away for the most part. But the first time the emo night LA, after they had gotten huge, I mean they'd done like a couple tours around the country and just like blown it out. Those guys came and did one in New York, and they did it at Webster Theater,
Oh
and
yeah.
they sold it out hard. I mean, thousands of people there. They basically sold out every room, and there was multiple. It was just the whole thing was just emo night, right? And it was stacked to the gills. I'm like, this is the biggest like fuck you to emo night Brooklyn you could possibly think of, because emo night Brooklyn's definitely not going to pull that off, right? Like they're big,
No.
but they're a little more niche. Like they do like Irving Plaza, they don't do Webster Hall, right?
Yeah.
And so they come in and blow this thing out, and I didn't realize at the time. Somebody told me afterwards because they were just like, yeah, that's her. So this is when Halsey and MGK were dating,
Okay.
and MGK DJ'd right after I did, and Halsey was with him. So like Halsey's in this like backstage room, and I'm just like, why do you look really familiar? And someone's like, that's Halsey. I'm like, no. Okay, I guess it is.
I
Like
love
good
that.
shit, bro.
No.
I like your music. Yeah. They're like, all right, emo night? Really? Like you're famous. Like what are you doing? But then this is, pre pop punk MGK. Like this is pre COVID. This is a long time ago, you know?
Yeah.
And they blow it out. So they bring me up on this thing. They're like, we got Will from Cartel, and they start playing Say Anything Else. And I'm like standing there on stage with like at least, I don't know, 75 or 100 people, and they're looking at me and they're just singing my song right at me.
I mean,
And
that's
I'm like,
cool.
I mean, it's cool, but it caught me off guard. And it being the person who's kind of like, I'm pretty modest about all this stuff. Like, I'm like, I mean, it's cool, but like, just don't, like, attention is not where, where I really thrive, oddly enough.
As a
But they're
lead
all just
singer
like,
of a famous band, that is shocking.
well, see, if I am in my own space and I am singing it, like if they wanted me to perform, no problem. But when everybody else is like, sing this song, I'm like, it's playing. I am singing it. It's coming out of the speakers. Why would I sing it right now? So I'm just like, and I had no idea that they were going to do it. They just like popped it on, and I'm like, everybody's going nuts. I'm like, how do I hype out to my own song? This
I
seems like
don't
kind of
know.
like super, egotistical to like go off to my own music, then I'm like, all right, you know, cute without the E cut from the team, bam, right into it. Like, let's just go,
Yep.
and then everybody's like, okay, cool. I'm like, see, I can jam. Now I can jam. I'm
Yeah.
free. But that sort of thing, I was just like, ooh. And then like, I've seen some other buddies, they're like, you don't play your own songs out of them? I'm like, no. They're like, that's the thing, man. You got to get them jazz. I'm like, it's just like,
No.
it's like the in Almost Famous where the singer Jason what's his
Jason
name?
Lee.
Jason Lee. Yeah, where he's like, I find the one guy in the room who's not getting off and I make them get off. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that's their vibe, and I'm like, nah, I'm the guitarist with Mystique, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I
that
just
he was the
happen to
coolest
sing
one. Yeah. He's the one over
for
there just
sure.
chilling. What's funny to me is like totally understood when you're saying like Halsey, like I think I'd react the same way. Like, whoa. Do you ever clock, and it sounds like you probably don't, do you ever clock the idea that like you were probably that person for a lot of people in green rooms as Cartel was coming up? Like, do you ever think about that?
You know, I haven't ever really thought about that until right now, but I guess, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah, people would be like, wait a
Especially
minute.
in a certain period of time, like when MTV and all that stuff was popping off, I could see them be like, yo, that's Welcome Cartel. But
Yeah.
I don't know, I've always like, I don't know, like I hang out with the merch people, you know what I mean? Like, it's like,
Dude, I
those are
was
my
my own
people.
merch person, man. Like
There you go.
so I hung out with them all the time because it was me.
That's
Um,
it.
no, I get that. I get that. I do want. Okay. I want to ask a question about the MTV stuff, but before I do, are you cool if we get to our first segment?
Yeah, that's right.
The first segment is called the Newly Friend Game. It's like the Newlywed Game, but we're friends. I'm going to ask you a question. Don't say your answer out loud. Write it down. I'm going to write down what I think your answer is, and we'll flip our
Okay.
boards and see if we got the same thing, and then we'll do the same question or something similar for me. My question for you is, what was your, in the height of touring as Cartel, what was your favorite song to play? Okay, so flip your board. Let me see what you got. So I wrote down, oh, I can't see. What did
Oh,
you write? Oh, Burn the City. I wrote that.
you got one. Yep.
Hell yeah. I wrote Lose It and Burn This City. Why? So tell me. I mean, I love that song. Why was Burn This City your go-to? Why'd you love it?
So the bridge of that song goes really, really hard live. And like
Oh,
the end where it breaks down, like that was just like one of our favorite parts to record. So there's just like a lot of like I don't know. There's a lot of just memories and emotions sort of wrapped up with it. And then it's also like about like growing up in our hometown, and it's like literally like we're gonna get the fuck out of here. Like that's
I'm
like
sure
I don't
that,
know about you guys, but we're out.
yeah, you're like, the original title was We're Gonna Get the Fuck Out of Here. We switched it last minute. We thought it was catchier to call it Burn This City.
Yeah, I mean it's I mean maybe New York has the same sort of thing, but especially like in the South with like smaller towns, like it's always like you can't talk shit about my hometown.
I
I
can
can.
talk. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like
Please, that's everywhere. Like
yeah.
I lived in Minneapolis for a little bit. I wasn't even from there, but I like lived there. People were like, Jesus, it's so cold there. And I'd be like, okay, hold on a second. All right. It's really fun over here. And there's great music and this, that. And then as soon as I left, I was like, it's fucking freezing. I don't know if y'all know this is cold over there. As soon as I was done.
It
Uh,
is. It's yeah.
yeah, dude.
It's
I would
deadly
guess
cold.
my guess, I don't know this with any sort of fact, but I would guess maybe you played like First Ave or somewhere like that.
100% first half.
One of my favorite music venues. And I've lived in multiple cities. First Ave is one of my favorite music venues I've ever been to.
Oh, it is great. Prince.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why. I mean, you're in the house of the king. You know what I mean? So you kind of like, you're
a
like, all
hundred
right, you
percent,
got to respect this. Okay,
a
we're gonna
thousand
do a
percent.
different question for me. What do I think the hardest song was for you to play live? Let me see what you got.
Okay.
Oh, Save Us and Tonight. So I wrote
Yeah.
down A and I wrote down 27 Steps.
Yeah. 27 steps is actually a lot harder than. That's a good one. That's a good pull.
So,
Like tonight is only because there's like this little
yeah, oh yeah.
like that
Did
one's
you
tough.
ever, first off, 27 Steps, in my opinion, and, everybody can have their own favorites. 27 Steps, in my opinion, is the most, like, unsung hero of your entire catalog.
I
I
agree.
think and don't get me wrong, like, I don't think there's a song I don't like, but I think that the one that over the course of time that I come back to the most is probably 27 Steps. And also, when you were talking about, I wasn't going to say anything because I knew I was going to mention this later. When you were talking about the vocal coaching, that song seems vocally impossible.
So that was one of the songs that we worked with Don Lawrence. Right, because
Oh,
that was during that record, and like he heard the demo, and like I kind of like that, especially at the end where the 27 steps, and
so
that
that's what I
little like
think about. Yeah.
yeah, he he was like, "You're kind of screaming that. Do you want to scream it or do you want to sing it?" I'm like, I mean, whatever, I don't care. In the demo, and he's like,
Whatever.
he's like, if we can get you to sing it, and then like right at the end, like break it up into that next section, he's like, I think it's gonna land a lot better. And then like I came back and did it that afternoon in the session, and the engineer was like, "Yo, that was fucking awesome. We're not gonna
Hey,
you're not gonna do that again. That's the one." I'm like, "Okay, cool, yeah, sweet, thanks, Don." So
I mean,
you are
that
correct.
was
That is a ripper.
totally one of my absolute favorites. You wrote down "Save Us." I would have thought that would not have been hard for you to do live.
Because I can't play piano. Like that's literally
Oh,
like the only song I know how to play on piano, other than any parts that I wrote for Chroma,
okay.
like Runaway or like like I wrote that stuff, but I'm like not a trained piano player, so Save Us is difficult.
Well, that makes a lot more sense. The I was going to say the song, the second most played song of yours in my world was A. I used to listen to A on
Yeah,
repeat. Where did that? And I'll get to the other question in a second, but I just have to know where the
yeah.
hell did that come from?
So that is a straight up like throwback, tip of the cap to Jimmy Eat World, Goodbye Sky
Mm.
Harbor.
Oh,
So like the end of that song where it gets all electronic and
yeah.
he does the thing, I was like, man, I really want to do that one day. While I was kind of messing around with piano, while we were recording that record recording and writing it over the course of like a year or two, I kind of noticed a common theme that like I was like, oh, because like Burn the City and To Save Us, like that little transition. I was like, okay, there's that. And then I was like, well, Burn the City kind of does a thing. We can, oh shit, these will go on top of each other. My version was We Know There's an Answer. There's a Beach Boys song on Pet Sounds called I Know There's an Answer, and that is the chorus. I know
Oh,
there's an answer. I know not, but I had to find it by myself. Like
I
that
never
is
caught
the
that.
Beach Boys. Yeah, it was a straight lift, except I changed it to we because the whole song is we, or A is anyway. So I was like, I asked the guys, I was like, hey, by the way, you guys won't know this song because this is a very deep track on Pet Sounds, but like,
Yeah.
this is a straight up lift. And the guys were like, yo, if Brian Wilson wants to sue you for lifting it, you've done a really good job. Like your band has made it. If they can find this at the end of a 12-minute song, like it's like,
Yeah.
all right, cool, yeah,
I mean, what a compliment to be sued by Brian Wilson.
100%, yeah. So I mean, and just sort of as it devolved, there's a lot of cool stuff where like all of the MPC, like the beats up for that was made from Andre 3000's MPC machine because
Are you
Outkast recorded at the same studio.
are you kidding me?
Those are Outkast samples.
That is fucking holy shit. Maybe that's one of the reasons I loved it. I could just tell. I just didn't.
It's
Um,
those hits, those bass drops, man. He's got them dialed.
one of the other things you mentioned, by the way, and I don't, I want to touch back on it because I think it's really interesting. Band in the Bubble was like a big, I feel like was kind of a seminal moment for y'all as a band. I mean, like this is going to date me a little bit and it's fine. But like, I do think that was an era where like MTV was like the thing. I think now you can watch 50 different things. You could be on Instagram or TikTok or watch 80,000 different streaming services. Like when you look back on all of that, I know that there was some controversy around it. And from what I read, like they said, oh, you don't have to record a full album. And then they were like, just kidding. And you're like, what's going on? But how do you look back on all that? Is that still something where you're like, I'm glad we did it because it's MTV, or you kind of like, meh, I could do without it?
It's both ways, right? It's like if you had like a second version of your life that you could go back and like, I would be more successful if, or I'd be less, whatever, whatever
Mm,
version of better would be if you could go back and like just like change a few things. That would certainly be one thing we wouldn't do from just like our
huh.
band would have been more successful because we kind of got pigeonholed a little bit into like more of the pop thing. Like, oh, you guys are
Mm,
like, because we were, we didn't scream. Screamo was a big deal. Like, Fall Out Boy was like edgier, but still on pop, and My Chemical Romance was like, the little and I say this with all respect, but goth rock. Um,
I think that's
like,
reasonable. Yeah.
yeah, but because it kind of got wrapped in this little like MTV, like Band in a Bubble, like reality show packaging, I think a lot of people missed it initially, which caused it to like sort of, the label sort of starts having some doubts, like, well, there's not really a single, and like, guys, yeah, it gets into a whole thing, but like there's a faction of people that were just like hardcore fans, and we got plenty of fans from the MTV thing. Not saying we didn't, but there was a faction of people that are like, man, Cartel sold out. Like they're not part of the
Ugh.
scene anymore. But we weren't like celebrity, like into the mainstream, pop radio standpoint either, because we, just didn't have that thing, whatever it may be. It just wasn't the right fit. So we would have been better off kind of staying local, if you will, but in our scene versus mainstream, at least as far as in the marketing goes, because we've had like a lot of the same people who kind of like panned the record to start with have come up to me over the years and be like, hey, I just got to say, like, self-titled's like one of my favorite records. I like it a lot more than Chroma. And I gave you guys a lot of hell online in reviews for that record.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, I was wrong. I'm like, thank you. Because there was like a couple people that I was just like, you son of a bitch. That,
The tricky thing from where I sit with that would be, and feel free to disagree with me, but like, I don't think you can convince me that take any band in that era, right? Like
mm,
take the starting line or or I don't know, the used, take anybody, take any of these kinds of bands and to offer this same offer to them and tell me that they're not going to take that. Like I don't see a world where a band in that era is offered an MTV show and says no. You know what I mean? I don't think I
so
would have.
there were two that did turn it down, but they didn't turn it down because they didn't think it was going to be good for them. They turned it down because they were like, we couldn't be stuck in a place for 20 days together.
Uh-huh.
Like that was it. We're like, we don't care. Like we grew up together. Like
Yeah.
like this is fine. This is normal. We live together at home. It's the same thing.
That to me felt like the start of the era where these producers of these shows are not necessarily producing these shows in the best interest of the subject of that show.
Correct.
So like you as a producer of Band in the Bubble, you are trying to take the creative process and arguably boil it down, a process that would take a very long period of time. Boil it down to I think you said 20 days.
Hmm.
Like I don't think like so I have we recorded an album when I was 17. I cannot stress enough how bad it was. But we recorded an album when I was 17 and we recorded 12 tracks in 7 days. And that was just the recording. Okay, that was just the recording, and it was
Right.
hard as shit. You, they are expecting a band to write an album and record like that's it's in. I don't know anyone that could do. Quincy Jones couldn't have done that.
No, and neither did we. That was the caveat. They told us when we were going to do it, like, we just want you guys to go in here. We need you guys to finish the album in there. So we're just going to kind of get like pieces of, and they kind of told us like, you guys are going to record, like not all of it, but part of it. And like they
Sure.
were there, like all those intro, like the very first episode, if you watch it, the very like all the intros about like yeah, I don't know what's going to happen before we go in and all that stuff was recorded at the studio where we were tracking the album. Like
Oh,
it was already done other than like some guitar stuff and vocal, like half of the vocals, but they basically said we want you guys to have 5 songs to finish in there, that ones you want to highlight. And we're like, cool, yeah, we can come up with some cool features. It's sort of like the Wyclef thing, like the Harlem Boys Choir, stuff like that
yeah.
came in. I was just doing an interview with People Magazine and they told me, like, they pop on, they're like, all right, well, so what's it going to be like to write and record an album in 20 days? And I was like, what are you talking about? We already recorded this shit. Huh? Like, I had no idea what they were talking about. And like the phone goes dead. They call back and my manager calls me. He's like, did you not get the memo? I'm like, what memo? He's like, so they're marketing this like you guys are writing and recording that in 20 days. I'm like,
Oh,
that's
Jesus.
impossible, dude. Like, who in their right mind? But the problem is that, there was enough people, they'd be like, oh, they just like sold their soul to MTV and like got a huge paycheck to go in here and do this thing. So if people hear the music in the context that we wrote and recorded it in 20 days, as a as an avid music fan, if you told me a band wrote and recorded something in 20 days, I'm going to full on expect it to suck and I'm going to hear it through that suck lens,
Yeah.
whatever the lens is for your ear, the filter. That's what I'm going to hear it as. So like certain people who might just be upset that we would be going mainstream for whatever reason, like would automatically kind of tilt their bias in a certain direction. And that was just like, you fools. Like, that's not what any of this is. And if anybody actually showed up to that thing every day on the pier, which they did, there was a live feed going from the control room out, and they would have like easily seen that we didn't record a single drum thing while we were there. Like, not one drum track was recorded while we were there. So yeah, it was just kind of all of it. They're like, oh, you got like 3 days to write your first single, and like you're gonna perform it on like live here on MTV. And so like we about like, yeah, do we lose it 2 years ago? What are you talking about? And it's like that was going to be it. So we played to lose it, and like it just sort of worked because the song is simple enough.
Yeah. Well, you also have
To
the harmonies layered
work
on
out.
there though. So like,
Right.
challenging to
Right.
do.
Yeah. It was just, I love it for the stories, like for
Yeah.
situations like this, or just people coming in like, dude, sit back and check this out. This is how stupid people are that run this whole thing. Uh, so it's fun from that sort of sense. But yeah, it's like I practice Buddhism. You can't look backwards.
No.
It's just like it's all acceptance, right?
I
So
know, totally.
not the band, also a great band, but
That is so funny. I used to listen to Acceptance a lot as well. I don't not as much as like Cartel, which is why I don't know what happened to Acceptance, but like used to listen to Acceptance all the time. Um, I wonder like so you talked about other bands passing on and all that kind of thing. It makes me think a lot about how much mentorship existed within this kind of like pop punk era. Once you became as big as you were, did y'all catch any younger bands coming to you and being like, "Hey, like your Cartel, hell, give us advice"?
honestly, a lot of that was more in the production side of things when I started
Oh.
producing bands. Pop punk, it's like you ended up being more like brothers than you did
Mm,
like. I mean, maybe there's obviously like a big brother thing that can happen there. Um, but I think a lot of our ages were so close that it was like, like there wasn't really this like hierarchy of like, let me tell you what to do, you know.
yeah, I
Um,
meant it in a
it honestly
nice
would have been
way.
better if there was. No, yeah,
Uh,
no, for sure. I got it.
so I hate to do this because I'm loving talking to you, but are you cool if we get to the final segment?
Let's go.
It's five fast questions. Does not at all have to be fast answers. It's just the last five questions we end every episode with. Question one: what is a favorite ritual of yours? So, for example, I love brewing tea every morning.
So it's the same, but it's coffee. I start with
Oh,
coffee every day.
are we talking like Chemex or like a?
So I got Instagram algorithmed with that Simply Good coffee maker because
Wait, I don't
I
know
forget the
this.
so there's a really expensive one that our friend, my wife's best friend, her parents are very well off, and they have this coffee maker, and I just love the coffee that comes out of it. I'm like, why does it taste better? I don't know. And this like looks exactly like it. I forget the name of the brand, but um they reference it, and they're like, it's half the price. I'm like, let's go, queue it up. So like it has a bloom feature, so instead of just like dumping water into the filter and letting it roll, it's more like a Chemex because it pours like a certain amount and lets it like fill up and steep and then drop, and then it
Oh,
fills it up some more. So it's like timed. And it definitely brews a better cup. So I do that every morning. It's the first thing I do when I wake up.
a great answer. Question two: what is a running bit you have with a friend or partner that makes you laugh?
Me and our drummer Kevin, every show we play, and just randomly with different things in life, we'll flick each other off. So like we'll just like randomly get each other. So he'll be playing, and I like don't have a chance to play. I'm like, ha ha, and he's like, oh, I can't do it because I'm playing a song right now. But then there'll be times where like I'll turn around, it's like a drum break, and he hits me. I'm just like, ooh, you got me.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a good one.
question three: what is a very controversial opinion that you have?
I wouldn't say it's a hot take. It's a it's a little more than lukewarm take. And my daughter's going to hear this, so she might be slapping me in a second. But Taylor Swift writes the same song, and only the same song.
Tell me more.
So you always notice she has like a cadence to her songs, like her hit songs.
Sure.
And any of the catchy ones, like some of her slow stuff, like the Evermore record or whatever. And I only really know this because my daughter's a huge Taylor Swift fan, so she'll like play it. I'm like, hey, I like that. I've noticed just as a songwriter, I'm like, it's always got this like thing to it, and the way I know people can't see me head bobbing when I do that, so apologies, listeners. But it's got this like little pattern. Like the song "Karma" is a good example, which my daughter plays out a bunch. But like the verses have this ba ba da ba ba da, like especially in the chorus of that. Ba da 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 ba 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 da
That's
da
the
da
part I know.
ba ba da da da
Yeah.
ba ba da da ba da. Like she always has a little thing, and she's always throwing it to like specific situations. Like she's not a very abstract writer. She'll
Mm.
just be like, I was in the living room, or like, our song is a screen door slamming. It's just like, it's always very visual.
Hmm.
Um, and I just kind of look at that and I'm like, that's calculated. It's genius, but it's calculated for sure. Um,
What did she say?
commenting. What did you say? I know it's called Our Song, right? Or Your Song. Our Song, yeah. We hear this all the time. I'm becoming an expert. Era's tour has played a lot in our living room.
And as well, and in mine, and I don't have a daughter, so imagine that.
It's fair.
Not complaining. It's
Yeah,
perfectly good. It's just not what I
but
would be listening to in my free time.
so that's it's the don't get crucified aspect of that take. Like if pre-daughter, if you'd asked me like what's Taylor Swift, I'm like, man. But like the more she's put out, the more I'm like, okay, yeah, this is very well like put together. It's not like an artist thing. And I haven't really listened to the new record as much, the Tortured
I haven't
Poet,
heard it yet.
whatever.
I haven't heard it yet.
That's the thing is like pattern recognition. I hear it, I'm just like, yeah, you write the same song every time, but like you just don't notice it at first. But
Yeah.
it just works. It never not works.
Well, I mean, Jack Antonoff's right there with her. You know what I mean? So they're making magic
Bingo.
as a team over there. Question 4, and I promise we're wrapping up because I feel like your daughter is ready to roll. Question 4, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, is there one particular moment that really sticks with you?
So when we did, I forget if it was called like Jingle Jam or Jingle Ball,
It was
something like.
Jingle Rock, Jingle Ball, Jingle Bell, Z100's Jingle Ball.
So there was a moment where when we were coming up, they had us play uh, like this pre-party thing, and then they were like, "Well, you're going to go out and you're going to announce the next person at the actual Jingle Ball thing tonight. So like, you guys are off tonight. Just like show up. They're going to take some photos, so like don't look like schleps or whatever, and then like just show up." And I'm like, cool. So then the person comes and gets us like, "Okay, you're up next." And I'm like, well, "So what are we doing?" They're like, "You're announcing Evanescence." And I'm like, "Okay." This is Madison Square Garden. And I'm
What?
like, yeah, yeah. So like we never played Madison Square Garden, but we're there. And it's like Hulk Hogan is standing over there because Brooke Hogan was like doing her thing. Like Bon Jovi is just like taking it all in with his kid. And like Billy Joe from Green Day is over. Like just I'm standing there. I'm like, this isn't real. Like, no, we're not here. And then they're like, okay, so the artist is going to come off. She's going to hand you the microphone, and then you guys are going to take that mic. You're going to go out, and then you're going to hand this microphone to Amy from Evanescence. I was like, what do I say? They're like, just keep it tight. Say like, hey, we're Cartel, whatever, and like, you guys having a good time. Like, they're like, you don't have to rush. And then you just go out, and it's just like, holy shit, that's Madison Square Garden. And not only that, but like Rihanna is the person I'm getting the microphone from. So I'm like, what's up, Riri? Oh my God, what's going on? And then, walk on stage. I'm like, what's up, Madison Square Garden? Okay. Like, you just feel like somebody's about to tackle you, like the person that runs out onto the field during the game and the
Oh, yeah.
security comes and gets them. Like, I was just like, somebody's about to get me. And the band's like behind me, and they're just all like, just very like, oh God. I'm like, you guys ready for Evanescence? Like, I'm sure it sounded cooler than that, but it certainly felt like I am not this cool.
Yeah, I
And
do
then it's
not
like,
belong here.
yeah, and then like their tracks start going, and Amy comes out. She's like, "Hey, cool, guys, a mic," and then goes and kills it. And I just like come off stage and like, "You did great, awesome, all right, cool, good job. All right, guys, go hang out in the green room." And then we just like walk back there, and it's just like all of those people I mentioned, just like standing in a big room with like other, parts of their entourage, and we're just kind of looking at each other like, what's going on? Like it was like the craziest thing. It's like a dream that you have that you describe to people, and you're like, my mom was there, and then it was like Picasso. Like I don't get it, like some
Oh
weird,
my
just random
God.
things from your brain just get tossed in. That was the
I,
imposter syndrome level.
yeah, I would say that's an amazing example. Um, the fifth and final question is we typically, if you're a tea drinker, we say, what's your favorite tea? If you're not, we say, what's your favorite tea or your favorite comfort?
Sour cream and onion flavored snacks.
Oh, that's a great answer.
Just kick back, little, little binge TV and some sour cream stuff going on, which sucks because I had to stop eating potatoes. Like I found out I had a nightshade allergy, so it's like cool,
What?
like having So like getting older is fun. Um, so like I was invincible 15 years ago. What happened? Like now it's like, well, you can't eat gluten and nightshades, by the way. It's like, oh, right on. So all the
Oh
fun is
my
gone in this world.
God.
Yeah. So I can't eat sour cream. Sour cream and onion potato chips was like my like death row meal. Like just give me a bag of Lay's sour cream and onion chips and I'll be all right.
Oh yeah.
So now it's like sour cream and onion like rice cakes with the little like rice chips. It's
Sorry,
so
I'm not trying to
lame.
laugh at you. That's just
No,
I can't even believe that. Okay.
it's a thing. Yeah. So
Dude,
ah,
I was a sour cream and cheddar Ruffles guy. Um,
yes.
I've been tasked with getting in wedding shape, so I'm probably not eating those right now, but goddamn do I love them.
They're so good. Sour
I
cream,
know.
just anything sour cream. So
Yeah, amazing.
maybe that's a hot take. I don't know anybody who doesn't like sour cream, but I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah, if they are, they're not welcome here, and that's what I'll say about
Correct.
that.
Same thing with
Um,
the cilantro people.
I like cilantro. Do you not like
I love
cilantro?
it.
Oh,
No,
you
I'm
love it.
saying the
You love it.
soap. The people are like, it's soap. I'm like, your genes are messed up. I don't know
Yeah,
what to tell you.
your genes. Yeah, you're coming right for their DNA. Your genes are messed up.
It's like, look,
Next.
come as you are. I'm accepting of all people, but people that taste soap when they eat cilantro, I'm like, there's something wrong with you, boss. Like,
Yeah,
you need to go to the doctor.
I
Thumbs
just had
up.
salsa the other night, and I had a bunch of cilantro in it because I made it, and it was great.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, there you go. My man, that's the podcast. How do you feel?
I love it.
Awesome,
Let's do
awesome.
it. Let's do it again.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd love to have you on. We're gonna throw some links in. I just love the Torrid stuff, so I'm gonna throw a link in just to the Torrid stuff. Obviously, if Cartel's releasing anything, let me know. I'll throw that in as well. But my man, thank you. This was such a blast, and I'm excited. We'll have you back.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That was Will Pugh. You can find him on Instagram at Will Pugh, and you can find music by Cartel or Taurids on all music streaming services. This episode was produced by Dylan Rosenthal. It was edited by Martin Alvarez. Our theme song and additional music are by Oliver Hymack. Our cover art was done by Neil Fraser with photography by Matt Mazisco. Social media by Dia Villegas. Please write a review and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts and wherever else you can. You can send any questions, comments, newly friend game suggestions, or tea suggestions to steepcombos@gmail.com or tweet us at steepcombos. I'm Josh Lanzet, and you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Josh Lanzet. We'll be back next week, so until then, happy steeping. The music industry has made it essentially impossible to make almost any money unless you're Justin Bieber or Drake. Like that's kind of where it sits from my vantage point. I might be wrong.
Yeah, that's spot on, pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
even writers get screwed. It's a whole thing. We could do a whole podcast just on that. In fact, bring me back and we'll just talk about that.
Great.